Story number 1: Window Estimate. I was finishing a logo redesign when the doorbell rang at 2:15 on Tuesday afternoon. The appointment wasn't until 4. I'd scheduled the window estimate for late afternoon specifically so I could wrap up client work first. But here someone was, 90 minutes early. Through the front window I could see a man on the porch, middle-aged, maybe late 40s. Polo shirt with some kind of logo I couldn't make out. Clipboard in hand. He looked normal enough, professional. I glanced past him toward the street, but didn't see a company van. He must have parked down the block to avoid blocking someone's driveway. People did that in our neighborhood all the time. I opened the door and he smiled. Afternoon. Here for the window assessment. You're early, I said. I had you down for 4. Schedule got shuffled around. Can knock this out quick if you've got time now. I hesitated. I really wanted to finish the logo. But the estimate was just walking through the house, looking at windows. 15 minutes, maybe 20.
Sure, okay, come in.
He stepped past me before I'd fully moved aside. Not aggressive exactly, just confident. The kind of movement that assumed permission. As he crossed into the entryway, I caught the smell. Cologne. Heavy and chemical, the kind that comes in a bottle shaped like a car or a grenade. It filled the small space immediately, made my sinuses itch. Nice place, he said, already looking around. You own or rent? Own. I closed the door. So what do you need to see? All the windows. Get a sense of the scope. He was scanning the living room, the staircase. You here by yourself during the day usually. The question landed wrong. Too personal. But maybe he was just making conversation. I work from home. My husband's schedule varied. What's he do? Consulting. I didn't elaborate. Should we start down here? He moved toward the living room without answering. Pulled out his phone. Mind if I take some photos? Need documentation for the estimate. Lighting conditions, that kind of thing. Off the windows. Whole room. Shows us what we're working with. He was already photographing. Not just the windows. The entire living room. The furniture arrangement. The view into the kitchen. I told myself this was normal. Maybe they needed context. Maybe it was standard procedure. How often does your husband travel? He asked, still photographing. Why do you need to know that? Just figuring out timing. Installation takes a few days. Easier if we know when someone's consistently home to let the crew in. That made sense. Sort of. But the way he'd phrased it. How often does your husband travel? Not what's your availability. Like he was specifically interested in when I'd be alone. We can work that out later, I said. Let's look at the windows. He moved through the downstairs methodically. Living room, kitchen, dining room, half bath. At each window he'd pause, take photos, but I never saw him actually measure anything. The clipboard stayed tucked under his arm. He asked about the backyard, whether we had a fence, whether the neighbors were close. Upstairs too, he asked. 3 bedrooms and a bath. He was already heading for the stairs. I followed, feeling something tighten in my chest. Just nerves. He was a contractor doing an estimate. This was fine. Upstairs, he moved down the hallway slowly. Opened the first bedroom door without asking. My office. He stepped inside, photographed it from multiple angles. I could see my laptop on the desk, the client work still open on the screen. You work in there? Every day. Most days. He nodded, made a note on his clipboard. Except when I glanced down I could see the paper was blank. Just a plain sheet. No form, no company header, nothing. West room. He was already moving to the next door. Yes, and the bathroom's there. but the main bedroom's the only one with windows that really need. He opened the guest room door, photographed it, stood in the doorway longer than necessary, looking at the bed, the closet, the layout. Then he moved to the bathroom. Photographed that too. Masters this one. He was at our bedroom door now. The windows in there are fine. They're newer than the others. Still need to see them. Comprehensive assessment. He opened the door. I stayed in the hallway, suddenly very aware that I didn't want him in there. He photographed the room from the doorway, then moved to the windows, looked out at the backyard. These face the back. Neighbors can see in at night. There are blinds. But if they're open, someone could see in from those houses. He pointed toward the properties behind ours. Why does that matter? Privacy considerations. Some customers want specific treatments for that. He turned back to the room. You mentioned your husband travels. How often? I didn't mention that. You asked, right. Just trying to nail down the schedule. I watched him look around our bedroom, at the bed, the dresser, the closet door that was slightly ajar. He took another photo. This one angled toward the hallway, toward where I was standing. I think we're done, I said. Just need to check the measurements against the... You haven't measured anything. He looked at me, smiled. Rough visual assessment first. Measurements come later. I think you have enough for an estimate. Usually takes a bit longer too. I actually just remembered I have a client call in 5 minutes. Video. We should wrap this up. It wasn't true, but I said it firmly, already moving toward the stairs. He followed, taking his time. At the bottom I headed straight for the front door, opened it wide. I'll email the estimate over, he said, reaching into his pocket. Pulled out a business card, handed it to me. Should have it by end of week. Great, thanks. He stepped onto the porch, then turned back. You said next week your husband's traveling. I didn't say that. Thought you mentioned it. My mistake. He smiled again. We'll be in touch. I watched him walk down the driveway. But he didn't turn toward where I'd assumed he'd park. He kept walking. Past our house, past the neighbors. 3 houses down he stopped at a gray sedan. No company logo, no magnetic sign, nothing. I pulled out my phone and zoomed in, photographed his license plate as he got in. He sat there for a moment, looking at something in his lap. His phone, maybe. Then he drove away. Inside, I locked the door. Looked at the business card. Basic design, probably printed at home. A company name I didn't recognize, a phone number, no website. The logo on the card didn't match the logo on his shirt. I'd seen it clearly when he'd walked away. Different company entirely. I called the number. It rang 4 times, then went to a generic voicemail. The kind that's never been set up. No name, no greeting. Just the automated voice saying to leave a message. I hung up and called the window company I'd actually contacted. The one I'd made the appointment with. I'm calling about my estimate appointment today, I said when someone answered. Shah, what's the name? I gave it. Let me check. A pause, keyboard clicking. I'm not seeing anything scheduled for today under that name. It was supposed to be at 4 this afternoon. What's your address? I told her. More clicking. No. Nothing. Are you sure you called us? I pulled up my email, found the confirmation. Read her the details. That's strange, she said. That's definitely our booking system. But there's nothing in our schedule. When did you make the appointment? Last Thursday. Oh. And someone came to your house today? Yes, at 2:15. What did he look like? I described him. That doesn't sound like any of our assessors. Did he have a company vehicle? No. A longer pause. Ma'am, I think you should call the police. That wasn't one of our people. I'm sitting in my office now, looking at the photos I took of his license plate. The police came, took a report, said they'd follow up. They asked what he'd photographed, where he'd gone in the house. I told them everything. Every room. Every question about my schedule, about my husband traveling. The officer asked if I'd mentioned my husband would be away next week. I tried to remember. I don't think I did. But maybe I had. Maybe he'd pulled it out of me somehow in the conversation and I hadn't noticed. He knows the layout now. He knows I work from home. He knows which windows face the backyard and whether the neighbors can see. He knows where the bedrooms are, and he has my address. The officer said to keep doors locked, consider a security system, be aware of my surroundings. Standard advice. He said the license plate might lead somewhere, might not. People use stolen plates all the time. I keep thinking about how he stepped inside before I'd really invited him in. How he'd moved through my house like he was memorizing it. How he'd lingered in that upstairs hallway, looking at our bedroom door. My husband gets home in 3 hours. I haven't told him yet. I'm not sure how to explain that I let a stranger walk through our entire house, photograph everything, because I assumed he'd parked down the street. The cologne smell is still in the entryway. I've had the windows open for 2 hours, but I can still smell it. Chemical and thick and wrong. I keep checking the street. Every car that passes, I look to see if it's the gray sedan. So far it hasn't come back. But he knows where I live. He knows when I'm alone. And I have no idea who he actually was. Story number 2, Breakdown Protocol. I board the 6:15 express bus from Baltimore to D.C. on a Thursday in late October, sliding into my usual seat 3 rows back on the driver's side. The cabin fills with the same faces I see most evenings. The woman with the nursing scrubs. The college kid with headphones. The older man who always sits in the back corner with his briefcase. We don't talk to each other, but there's a comfort in the routine. Same bus, same time. Same driver with the gray mustache who always nods when I scan my pass. The bus pulls onto I-95 just as the sun drops behind the trees. I settle in with my phone, scrolling through work emails I should have answered hours ago. Claims reports. Damage assessments. Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. Outside, the highway lights start to flicker on in long orange rows. 20 minutes in, somewhere past Laurel, the engine noise changes. It's subtle at first. A slight roughness in the hum. Then the driver's voice comes over the intercom, calm and professional. Folks, we're experiencing a minor mechanical issue. Nothing to worry about. But I'm going to exit here and pull over so we can get it checked out. Company protocol. Safer than stopping on the highway shoulder with all this traffic. A few passengers look up. Most don't. The bus slows and takes an exit I don't recognize. Not one of the usual stops. The road narrows quickly, streetlights disappearing behind us as we turn onto what looks like a service road. Trees press in on both sides. No buildings. No lights except our headlights cutting through the dark. The driver pulls onto a gravel shoulder and kills the engine. The sudden silence feels wrong. I can hear someone coughing 2 rows ahead. The hiss of air breaks. Outside, there's nothing but empty fields and a tree line about 50 yards out. Just called it in. The driver announces, standing up and stretching. Mechanics already in the area. Should be here in a few minutes. Appreciate your patience. A few people sigh. The college kid pulls out his phone. I look out the window and see only darkness. The smell of diesel exhaust drifts in through the vents. mixing with something else. Damp earth, rotting leaves, the smell of fields at night. I tell myself this is fine. Buses break down, it happens. But I've been riding this route for 6 years, and I've never seen a driver exit onto a road like this. The highway shoulder would have been lit, visible. This feels too isolated. The mechanic arrives in under 5 minutes. That's the first thing that bothers me. 5 minutes. We're on a service road in the middle of nowhere, and a mechanic just happens to be close enough to arrive before the engine even cools down. The van is white and unmarked. No company logo. No phone number on the side. It pulls up behind us, headlights flooding the cabin. A man gets out. He's wearing gray coveralls, but they're generic. No name patch, no company identification. He walks to the front door, and the driver opens it with a hydraulic hiss. They speak quietly for a moment. I can't hear the words, but I can see their postures. Too casual, too familiar. Then they both turn to face us. The driver walks down the aisle with a clipboard. His expression is pleasant, apologetic. Folks, I need to collect your phones for just a minute. We're putting together an emergency contact list in case this repair takes longer than expected. Company policy. You'll get them right back. The nursing woman in the front row hands hers over without hesitation. Then the college kid. Then the man across from me. I watch them drop their phones into a small cardboard box the driver is carrying. No one questions it. Why would they? He's the driver. He's in uniform. This is protocol. But my hand stays in my pocket. I'm trying to rationalize it. Maybe this is policy. Maybe I've just never experienced a breakdown before. But something feels off. The mechanic hasn't moved from the front door. He's just standing there, one hand on the rail, watching us. And the driver hasn't even looked at the engine. No panels open, no tools out. The driver reaches my row. Sir, I don't have it on me, I lie. Left it at the office. He looks at me for a beat too long, then nods and moves on. I watch him collect 4 more phones from the passengers behind me. Then he walks to the rear door and stands there. The mechanic is still at the front exit, both doors covered. Both men just standing, waiting. My chest tightens. The college kid speaks up. So how long is this going to take? The driver smiles. Shouldn't be long. But nobody moves toward the engine. I feel sweat prickling along my spine. I'm trying to tell myself I'm being paranoid, that I've watched too many news stories, read too many headlines. But my body knows something is wrong before my brain catches up. The way the mechanic shifts his weight. The way the driver's eyes scan the cabin, counting us. I stand up suddenly, gripping the seat in front of me. I don't feel good. I say, loud enough for everyone to hear. I think I'm going to be sick. The driver looks at me. Sir, just sit down. We'll be moving soon. I can't. I'm really sick. I need air. I stumble toward the rear, one hand on my stomach, making a show of it. The driver steps aside slightly, and I lurch past him toward the emergency window. My hands find the red release handle. Sir, you can't. I yank it. The window pops outward with a sharp crack, and I'm through it before anyone can react. I hit the gravel hard, stumbling, then break into a run. Behind me, I hear shouting. The driver yelling something. Footsteps on gravel. I don't look back. I run across the dark field, my dress shoes slipping on uneven ground, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The grass is knee-high and wet. My ankles twist on hidden ruts. I can see lights in the distance. A gas station maybe, a half-mile away, maybe more. I run until my lungs burn, until I can't hear anything behind me but my own heartbeat. When I finally reach the gas station, I collapse against the wall under the fluorescent lights and call 911 with shaking hands. The police find the bus 2 hours later on a different service road, 2 miles north of where I left it. Empty. All the phones smashed on the floor. The passengers are located in a grocery store parking lot a mile away, shaken but unharmed. They tell the officers the driver and mechanic let them go after I ran. Just opened the doors and drove off. The next day, a detective calls me. The uniform and ID badge were reported stolen from a depot locker 3 days earlier. The real driver was on vacation in Pennsylvania. They don't know who the man on the bus was. They don't know what he wanted. I still take the bus. Different route now. Different time. I sit near the emergency exit, and I keep my phone in my hand. And every time the driver makes an announcement, every time we slow down unexpectedly, I feel my pulse spike and my palms start to sweat. Because I keep thinking about how easy it was, how we all just handed over our phones, how nobody questioned it until it was almost too late. Story number 3, sample drop. I was locking up the dermatology clinic at 7 in the evening when the front door chimed. A man in a pressed charcoal suit walked in carrying a black pharmaceutical sample case, the kind with reinforced corners and a company logo embossed on the side. He smiled apologetically and said he was running behind on deliveries. I'd been doing the evening shift alone for 3 weeks now, ever since my promotion. Dr. Patel usually left by 5, and I handled the last appointment slots and closing procedures. It was quiet work, mostly just tidying the exam rooms and confirming tomorrow's schedule. The man set the case on the reception counter and pulled a laminated badge from his shirt pocket. The logo matched the pharmaceutical company we ordered from regularly. He said he was sorry for the timing, that he'd confirmed the drop-off with Dr. Patel yesterday afternoon. He used her full name, Anjali Patel, and mentioned she'd asked about the new retinoid samples specifically. I pulled up the calendar on my computer. Nothing was scheduled for a delivery today. I scrolled back through the week to be sure. The doctor had been distracted lately with the new laser equipment installation, constantly on calls with the technicians and the leasing company. It wouldn't be the first time she'd forgotten to update the system. The fluorescent lights above my desk buzzed, that electrical hum that gets louder when you're the only person in a building. Outside the window, the last few stores in the strip mall were going dark. The nail salon 2 doors down switched off their neon sign. The sandwich shop was already closed, chairs stacked on tables. He asked which door led to the supply closet. He gestured toward the hallway behind me, the one that branched into exam rooms and the storage area where we kept pharmaceutical samples in a locked cabinet. His tone was casual, like he'd done this 100 times. I told him I'd need to check with Dr. Patel first, that she usually liked to verify deliveries personally. He nodded and said that made sense, that he appreciated thoroughness. Then he glanced toward the window and mentioned that my car was the only one left in the parking lot. He said it like an observation, something neutral, but it landed differently. I'd parked in my usual spot near the entrance, the same space I used every shift. He would have had to walk past it to reach the door. But the way he said it made me realize he'd been out there longer than that. Long enough to notice the lot emptying. Long enough to count vehicles. I stood up and told him the doctor was still in the back office finishing her notes, that I'd check with her about the delivery. My voice sounded normal, I think. I walked toward the hallway door, the one that separated the reception area from the rest of the clinic, and pulled it closed behind me. There was a lock on my side, a simple push. button mechanism we used when patients were in the waiting room and we needed privacy in the back. I pressed it. The hallway felt longer than usual. The exam rooms were dark, doors open just enough to see the empty chairs and paper-covered tables. Dr. Patel's office was at the end, and I knew it would be empty too. Her desk cleared except for a framed photo of her kids and a coffee mug she'd forgotten to take home. I walked back to the reception area. Through the narrow window in the door, I could see him standing exactly where I'd left him, hands resting on the sample case. He wasn't looking at his phone or checking his watch. He was just standing there. I sat down at my desk and reached under the lip of the counter where the silent alarm button was mounted. It was a small red switch, installed after a break in at the urgent care clinic across town 2 years ago. I'd never used it before. I pressed it with my thumb and felt it click. Then I picked up the desk phone and dialed the pharmaceutical company's customer service line. I put it on speaker. The hold music was bright and generic, something with piano and synthetic strings. He watched me from the other side of the glass door. A woman answered after 30 seconds. I told her I was calling from Dr. Patel's office to confirm a delivery. I gave her the address and asked if she could verify that their representative was on site. I kept my tone light, administrative. She asked for the rep's name. I looked at the badge he'd shown me, still visible through the window, where he'd clipped it back onto his pocket. I read it aloud. She put me on hold. The music came back. He shifted his weight, adjusted the sample case. The fluorescent lights buzzed. She came back on the line and said their Arizona representative was currently on vacation in Seattle. She asked me to repeat the badge number. I did. There was a pause longer this time, and I heard her typing. She told me that credential had been reported stolen 4 weeks ago. Her voice changed when she said it, became more careful. She asked if the person was still on the premises. I said yes. I said I was alone in the office. She told me to stay on the line and said she was contacting local authorities immediately. He was still watching me through the window. I don't know if he could hear the conversation clearly, but he must have understood something from my face, from the way I'd gone still. He reached down and picked up the sample case, then set it on my desk, sliding it through the small gap under the glass partition we used for passing paperwork. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me for a moment, his expression unchanged, polite and blank. Then he turned and walked toward the front door. The chime sounded when he pushed it open. I watched him cross the parking lot under the orange streetlights, his suit jacket unbuttoned, his stride unhurried. He didn't go to any of the parked cars. He walked toward the access road behind the strip mall and disappeared past the dumpster enclosure. The dispatcher was asking if I was still there. I told her yes. She said officers were 2 minutes away. I could hear the sirens starting up in the distance, thin and rising. The sample case was still on my desk. I didn't want to touch it, but I leaned closer and looked through the clear plastic window on top. Inside, I could see folded newspaper and something wrapped in silver. Not samples. Not medication. The sirens got louder. Red and blue light washed across the parking lot. I unlocked the hallway door and then the front entrance. 2 officers came in with their hands near their belts, asking if I was all right, asking which direction he'd gone. I pointed. They went after him. A 3rd officer stayed with me and asked me to step away from the case. She put on gloves and opened it on the counter, carefully, like it might be fragile. The newspaper was from last week. Tucked underneath was a roll of duct tape, the heavy kind, and a box cutter with the blade extended. They didn't find him. They searched the access road and the residential streets behind the plaza, checked security footage from the grocery store next door. He'd parked somewhere else, or someone had picked him up, or he'd just walked until he was out of range. I gave my statement twice. They kept the case as evidence. Dr. Patel came back to the office, even though I told her she didn't need to. She stood with me while I locked up again, this time with an officer waiting outside. The pharmaceutical company sent a new badge protocol memo to all their clients. Dr. Patel changed our closing procedures so no one works the evening shift alone anymore. I still do the same job, same desk, but I check the parking lot before I unlock the door each morning. I check it again before I leave. And sometimes, when the fluorescent lights buzz too loud, I remember the way he looked at me through that window, patient and certain, like he had all the time in the